Ladies and gentlemen, we do thank you very much for your attention, and now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Welcome to our top travel destinations. I am your host, Kevin Flanagan. I have been editor of the weekly travel news column in the Sunday Independent and the Fine Wine and Food Guide, and I am here to use my decades of experience to help you know exactly where to stay, eat, drink, shop, and explore when visiting the world's top travel destinations. So sit back and enjoy the wonders of travel as we take off on our magical journey together. Welcome to Kevin's Top Travel Destinations, and this podcast we're going to look at 6 fabulous city breaks for the autumn-winter. I think city breaks are the real lifeblood of travel, if you like. You have 2 or 3 days to really deep dive into a completely new destination. There are so many different types of cities and so many different types of city break goers. Are you a party goer, a culture vulture, a foodie, an adventurer? Well, I've tried to pick 6 breaks that are a little bit different, but very, very accessible nevertheless. And I'm bearing in mind 2 things. Now, as we've seen from the podcast on Is It Too Hot to Travel? Going in the autumn/winter, you're going to be able to avail yourself of better weather, less crowds, and less costs, so it's not to be sniffed at. So let us start off with my first choice. And my first choice is Valletta on the island of Malta in the Mediterranean. Why did I pick Valletta? Well, I love Valletta. I've been there multiple times. It is an extraordinarily historic place. Malta has that unique blend of the UK heritage going right back to the time of the Crusades, all the way through to this Northern African influence. In the language particularly, the Maltese language is very, very Arabic. But what it also has, it has something that's very good if you're a UK island or USA. All the signage is in English, and it's very easy and comfortable. A lot of people speak good English as well. The thing about Valletta is it's so steeped in history. You are walking around history. You're going back to the Crusades. Valletta has an old port with some of the fortifications that go back to the time of the Crusades, that go back to the time of the famous Order of Malta and this deep and dark history. And of course, Malta was always a strategically vital island stuck in the middle of the Mediterranean. That's why when the Second World War happened, the Germans and the English fought like dogs over it, and there was such bravery shown by the Maltese that the island itself was awarded the VC, the Victoria Cross, the only island to be awarded such a remarkable sign of courage. So what can you expect when you go to Valletta? I think it's small in size but big in stature. It's elegant. It's a beautiful capital right up on the top of this rocky promontory, which gives you such fabulous views out at the port and the boats that are coming and going. It really is busy. You'll see super yachts. You'll see lots of sports yachts and competitive yachts, people going in and out. The actual city itself was built in 1566 between the 2 natural harbours. And now, of course, it's a UNESCO listed building, and you've got these incredible gilded cathedrals and the beautiful gardens, the pleasure gardens, the great houses, and all surrounded by these walls. And you can walk at night in the heat, that lovely Mediterranean heat. I've walked around and down and through, and you'll hear the crickets making their noise in that general hub of the city. Going back late at night, you enter through the city gates, designed by Renzo Piano himself. And this really is a sense of walking into this ancient city. It's quite Game of Thrones. And the cobbled streets, and now they're bedecked with fantastic restaurants and bars. It's a really wonderful place to visit. And out of season, it's great and good value. And you'll get things like the saluting battery, the firing of the cannon that takes place at midday. And Valletta's only, from the main European capitals, only a 3-hour flight. So definitely worth considering. Now, another place I would consider going for a city break, you may find this a little bit out of the ordinary, but if you're going for a longer city break, say of 3 nights, Athens in Greece. Firstly, you'll be able to get tolerable heat out of seasons and no queues. You're going to the place that always touched me as I studied ancient history and learnt about the demos and the seat of democracy and Socrates and Plato and Aeschylus, and there's nowhere like it. Countries that are still democracies owe their livelihood, their DNA, lifeblood to this very strange small city stuck on a promontory. And of course, it is the promontory, the 5th century hilltop citadel of the Acropolis, that has really made Greece and Athens such an iconic place. Go through the Parthenon's crumbling columns and just breathe in history. You can then got the street art in the rest of the city, which can be, quite edgy and rough. They've had their hard times economically, but they're on the way back. And then you've got these wonderful beaches along the Attic coast. You can actually go, as I did, on a trip to the Pamphik Stadium. This was built in AD 143. It was the first Olympic Games were hosted there, as was the first modern Olympics in 1896. If you want an amazing spiritual time, catch a trip to Delphi. The Delphi Oracle was this extraordinary phenomenon where kings would go to listen to their future. The Spartans would go to hear their future down this huge pit in the ground. History whispers to you. So that's my second suggestion. The third has been really in the news, and it's Tbilisi in Georgia. Of course, Georgia has suffered the annexation of part of its territory by the Russians, and Vladimir Putin has had his eye on Georgia and has stirred up a lot of malcontent there. And it is an extraordinary, intriguing place. You've got a real taste of a different culture, the cobbled streets, once ruled by the Prussians, then the Russians. You've got Art Nouveau buildings, the Shersheim with these old Soviet structures, and 6th century Orthodox church towers. It's amazing, and it's a real bohemian spirit. Hidden bars and restaurants, vintage-style cafes. It's a sort of a strange old John le Carre vibe to it. I think you'll love it. The way disused Soviet factories have been converted into boutique hotels, the sulphur bathhouses. It's just a wonderful place. And of course, it's one of the earliest centres for winemaking. 8,000-year-old history, predates the Romans, and you'll only pay like €6 for a bottle of really good table wine. The only challenge is it's nearly long haul. It's a 6-hour flight from around Europe, but I think it's worth it, and I think they need the encouragement as well with the difficulties that are going on now. So that would be my third. Dubrovnik and Cavtat is my next, and they come as a couple, really. I loved and hated Dubrovnik when I went there one summer. I hated it because the cruise liners were in. There were thousands of people. It was like going to a football match. You know, when you rock up to Wembley or you rock up to some great stadium and you're shoulder to shoulder, and that's okay because you're going to find a seat. But when you're in these streets and it's 34 degrees and you're trying to see the church and you're trying to see the museum, it's a beautiful, jaw-droppingly beautiful city. Very small, very neat, but packed. And I think this is another one of these shoulder destinations that are best seen out of season. And if you're going in the autumn, early winter, you'll have good weather, you'll have plenty of sunshine and no queues. And of course, you'll then be able to enjoy the Game of Thrones vistas. You will be able to get the open air concerts. There's a lot going on in the streets. They've got the wonderful restaurants, and the history of war is always there. And I remember quite soberly, because of the Serbian invasion and the war, which Croatia finally got independence, but you can still see the bullet marks where the Serbian troops fired down on the cities. And then when you've had your night in Dubrovnik, catch the ferry. It's a 40-minute, wonderful ferry ride out to Cavtat. And that will take you along the coast As you may have heard, the waters around Croatia are the clearest and the cleanest. And on this short hop on the ferry, which costs just a few dollars, you will see the beautiful dolphins jumping in front of the boat. The sea fauna and flora is absolutely wonderful. And I have to say, it's one of the most beautiful towns on the Adriatic coast. I had an afternoon there that I will never forget. It's a very small, compact little port, and it has this ancient church, the rector's palace, a Renaissance mansion that displays manuscripts from the 19th century scientists, and you've got St. Nicholas's Church, which I went into and lit candles, and you come out and there's this little walkway that walks all the way around the water. And you've got lots of smaller, it's not extravagant, they're no sort of Russian billionaires' super yachts, they're just nice small boats and some fishing boats. And you can go around, have your ice cream. There's a couple of famous cafes there. You know, some of the European royalty and celebrities. Cavtat is a place, it's sort of a hidden gem. And what I would recommend you do is catch one of the carts, golf carts that goes up to the Hotel Croatia. I was lucky enough to have stayed there. It's built like a ship on the rock, like a cruiser, and you have a room that looks down into the sea, and I'll never forget the view. And I'll never forget eating on the very top, on the penthouse, and overlooking. You can see Dubrovnik in the distance as the sun sets. Nothing quite like it. So that's another great recommendation if you want a bit of a chill. Now, if you want a little bit more adventure and you want to get out and about more and you're not just going to relax as you would in Cavtat, I would suggest going to Reykjavík. Now, I loved Reykjavík for strange reasons. The first thing about Reykjavík, when I arrived in, it was so interesting because it's actually green. So it shouldn't really be called Iceland, the country of which Reykjavík is the capital. It really should be called Greenland. But having said that, Reykjavík is an extraordinary place. I think it's rather a mad place in a very interesting way. I spent a good few days there. I was there at a big conference and a food festival, and they have this 6 months of dark, and it drives them slightly crazier. But having said that, I have great affection because they're very industrious and they're a hardy people. You can see that from the cod wars, and they make their money from the sea. You're going to get the very best seafood. Oh my goodness. And their cuisine and their chefs are so on the ball now. They're leading the way in so many different ways. I particularly love Reykjavík because I'm of an era when I grew up with Bobby Fischer. And of course, Fischer had his world championship match with Boris Spassky. It was USA versus Russia. It was like a Cold War extravaganza. And it was always great to go there. And he's buried there, and you can go to his grave. When I was there, I was also staying at the hotel, this wonderful hotel, and Yoko Ono was there. But if you go to Reykjavik, you have to go on these trips. One of them is to see the tectonic plates. It plays into this sense of the people in Reykjavik being really on the edge, because the actual edges of 2 of the continents are slowly moving under your feet. Imperceptibly, it's true. But you can go there and you can look at the tectonic plates and the 2 continents shifting. I always thought that was a symbol of the place. There's the geyser, of course, where you go and you wait, and every 30 seconds it shoots up into the sky. And then, of course, the Blue Lagoon, which is an industrial sort of pit. The water is so full of chemicals. Apparently they're quite good for you, and you sit there in the water, literally sitting with your feet just float. There's nothing quite like it. Your skin is glowing when you come out. There is nowhere like it. So go there and enjoy. It's wonderful. Now, another break I'd suggest is Berlin in Germany. Now, I was lucky enough to do a travel TV show there. I can remember it was after the wall had come down, but there was still this buzz of U2 were recording their album there. I went to the very famous Hansa Studios where David Bowie recorded Heroes. This was this incredible, important studio. It was right on the wall. And we went and shot near Checkpoint Charlie. And for me, being a child of the 60s and the potential for a World War, all revolved around what happened between East and West Berlin and this incredible scenes of spies being exchanged at Checkpoint Charlie. It's resonant with George Smiley and those great novels, Smiley's People and Tinker Tailor, The Soldier, Spy, those John le Carré novels. And then you have these extraordinary sights to see in the city, like the Holocaust Museum, this haunting, huge acre wide of these pillars. You get lost in it, in this darkness. And having visited Auschwitz, it was a very powerful place. You've got the Brandenburg Gate. You have Hitler's bunker, and we went on a tour with a World War II expert, an English person who'd been in the Special Forces, and he took us around. He took us to the SS headquarters, very dark places where the plotters had been executed who tried to kill Hitler. The famous Count that Tom Cruise plays in the movie. I remember looking at the floor because the building was not destroyed by the Allies in the bombing. And there was actually in the intarsia going around the sides of the room, the swastikas were actually in the wall, in the floor. It's extraordinary. We stayed at the Art Hotel, which each room was made by a different artist. I remember one of the beds was high up on the wall, and the cameraman, we had a lot of drink the last night before we left, and he'd forgotten, and he went to go to the loo in the night and fell 6 foot and came down with a big gash across his head. But it's that sort of atmosphere, and you're going to meet lots of the East and West German people, and now a mixing pot of different emotions, and it's wonderful. I even went to a mad tango class in the old part of East Berlin, the Arab part, and it was really an extraordinary atmosphere. So I would not miss that. It really is a very, very unique place. So there are my 6 picks. I think you've got quite a lot to look at there, from Berlin to Reykjavík, all the way over to Tbilisi in Georgia, Athens in Greece, where it's not going to be hot, Valletta in Malta. I think you've got something there to sink your teeth into, whatever your interests, whatever age, background, everything is up for grabs in those destinations. So book one when the autumn evenings are coming in, and you'll have the best 2 or 3 day city breaks of your life.